Let's touch on something real quick that you referenced a moment ago, and that was with regard to changes with underwriting. This was off my radar. You're saying it, but it's a change that just came out from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and it, based on what you explained to me, it's going to be a big deal.
It is. So, it's one of those things, Fannie and Freddie are kind of back at it again. And I think the intention was maybe a good thing because no one wants what happened when we had the boom and the bust.
Sure.
Again, they're going to have a change coming January 26th. Like you said, it wasn't talked about. It just all of a sudden was announced this week. And, Happy New Year, basically,
Yeah,
right?
so it kind of sounds like, well, people aren't really paying that close attention. Well, let's go ahead and change the way the game's being played.
Yeah, it kind of sounded that way to me as well. So January 26th, they've added a new layer into the appraisal process. So what used to happen before the 26th is you had the appraiser come out, then they submitted it, the underwriter signed off on it, reviewed it, made sure it was okay. And then you kind of celebrated, yay, we've cleared appraisal condition. Well, now what is going to happen is that that appraisal is going to be loaded into Fannie Mae's system or Freddie Mac. It's called a collateral underwriting software program.
Okay.
It's a lot. It means a whole lot of nothing to most of us. However, it's a little bit of trouble. And what that software is going to do is take and assess the risk. So they're going to look at the comparable sales that the appraiser used, and then they're going to pull 20 other comparable sales around. Now, the challenge is it's a computer. It's kind of like Zillow.
Right.
Okay, it can't necessarily think. And so it's going to pull maybe comps that are not necessarily equal to your neighborhood because it could go outside of your community and outside of your neighborhood.
So it's based on geography, not the specificity of the geography. So if you have one neighborhood that may be more desirable than another, it might not necessarily factor that in.
Right, and what they're doing is assessing risk. Okay, this is not to protect you, the buyer. This is to protect, obviously, the lender, right?
Yes.
So when they find a comp that they feel is better from a risk perspective, they go back to the appraiser and give them that comparable and say, why didn't you use this one?
Okay.
So meaning that that's a lower comp,
Yes.
odds are, right?
Yes.
The appraiser hopefully will be able to overcome the reason they didn't use it. And then Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac will say, I agree with you or I disagree. If they agree, appraisal stays the same. If they disagree, we have an issue because that appraisal can be reduced.
So with appraisals already having been one of the biggest obstacles to closing, this only takes that process and makes it more complicated.
It does. And, it's one of the things that we have not been a fan of VA and FHA deals because of their appraisal issues and standards. It may cause a slide back to those programs in favor of the avoiding this collateral underwriting software program. This is something that we're all speculating. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen the consequences of it. But what we're seeing about and hearing about it, we're not in love with it. And I think the other thing it's going to do is it's going to cause appraisers to be overly conservative and cautious.
Sure.
And really
Which
maybe
they already kind of were because many of them were blown out with the regulation changes, and those that were left, were certainly being made to toe a conservative line to begin with.
They were, but they had come back to a more healthy perspective because I don't think everything is always wonderful, and if a buyer is willing to pay it, it's always necessarily worth it from a comp standpoint, which is what everybody said when in the boom is that the value is what a buyer is willing to buy and a seller is willing to sell it for, and yet that did not behold us very true to long-term financial
sure,
health.
it's easy to do that when you have creative mortgage instruments, but we know that wasn't reality.
So now I think we've come back to a healthy perspective of value with appraisers, and this, I think, is going to kind of shake that up a little bit.
Okay, and so if you're wondering if that is going to apply to you, keep in mind that if you have a property that's being financed that's under $417,000, whether you're selling your property and you have somebody that's interested in buying in process that is at that price, or if you are looking to buy, that means you. This more than 80% of loans are still Fannie and Freddie backed, so this is certainly going to be a big